Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Back to Ashes. My name is Phoenix. To the elite members of the channel, thank you so much. I cannot show enough appreciation for your dedication and support. With that being said, it is now time to go back to Ashes, for once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and happier person every day. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack or tuck in to get warm, and prepare for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Craigslist Horror Stories. Right after this intro, there will be an ad. Right before the first story, there will be an ad. And after that, there will be no more ads within this video. I used to work the late shift at a fast food joint. You'd think the worst part would be the drunks or the occasional angry customer. But no, it was him. He came in alone. Always alone. Same time, same order. Never spoke above a whisper. And never looked anyone in the eye. Just stood there at the counter, barely mumbling out his request. Then stepped to the side to wait. And that's when it got weird. While his food was being prepared, he would sway back and forth like a metronome. Not like he was bored. No. It was like something was off inside him, like he was fighting to keep something in. His arms would hang limp at his sides, fingers twitching now and then, head tilted slightly down, like he was listening to something we couldn't hear. He came in so often that he started to get a nickname. The kitchen staff called him the Pendulum. It became kind of a sick little in-joke. Who had to take his order, how long he swayed that night, stuff like that. Nobody wanted to admit how much he made us uneasy. Then, one night, he just stopped coming in. A few weeks passed. Then one of my coworkers sent me a Newslink article. I almost dropped my phone. It was his face, that same dead-eyed stare. Those sunken cheeks. He was wanted in connection with a missing persons case. His mother. She hadn't just disappeared. She'd been found. Murdered. Brutally. A week later, the story broke that he'd been caught. He confessed to everything. Said he'd done it because the voice told him it was time. He'd been living with her body for days. Eating. Sleeping, leaving only to grab food from our restaurant. That meant every time he came in, quiet, swaying, he was heading back home to her corpse. We were serving a man who was rotting on the inside, same as the body he left upstairs in his house. We all tried to laugh it off, tried to shake the thought. But here's the part that really got under my skin. After he was arrested, they searched his home. Police found fast food wrappers all over the place. And in the trash, they found something else. A receipt and a Craigslist ad looking for someone to love. From our store, with my name on it. Dated the day after they believed he killed her. Meaning, he came in, ordered like usual, and her body was still warm. I thought I was safe in the park. I wasn't. My name is Rachel. I'm 23, from Dublin, Ireland. A few nights ago, I was walking home from work. My usual route cuts diagonally through a park, a path I've walked almost every day for the past year. It's lined with old iron benches, some worn down with rust and moss, but I barely notice them anymore. I've always felt safe there, familiar. That night, one of those benches was occupied by a man. He looked ordinary, middle-aged, maybe in his 50s. Graying hair, a heavy coat, and a half-empty bottle of vodka resting beside him, like it belonged there. He didn't look at me as I approached, just stared down at the path, his elbows resting on his knees. He didn't send off any warning bells. And I'm not stupid. I've had my fair share of encounters with men who gave me a bad feeling. The ones who linger a little too long or stare a little too hard. I've taken the long way home because of people like that. But this man? Nothing. Just there. Until I got within a few feet of him. He mumbled something, low, guttural, and unmistakably aimed at me. I didn't catch the words, but the tone stopped me cold. I kept walking, pretending I didn't hear it. I tugged out one earbud. Then I heard him get up. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw him step away from the bench and begin to follow. His footsteps were soft, but steady. I could feel the weight of them behind me. I kept walking, heart ticking faster, and started a video recording on my phone, just in case. "Hello," he called out, his voice sing-song and mocking. "Hello, are you deaf or something?" I turned just slightly and said, "No, I'm not. I just don't want to talk to you." He laughed, a strange wheezing sound. "Well, why not? Because I don't know you, and you shouldn't be following strangers through parks." He slurred something back about how there was nothing wrong with walking with someone and that he just wanted to be my friend. The way he said it made my stomach twist. His words felt off, like they were rehearsed, like he'd said them before. Still, he didn't get any closer. He just kept matching my pace, grinning, drunk but focused. So I did what I've always done. I kept walking. The exit wasn't far now, just past the cycle gates that slowed down bikers. I could see the streetlights from my road flickering on. I reached the narrow part of the gates where you have to step through slowly, and that's when he spoke again. "Can I have a hug then?" No, you bloody well cannot," I snapped. "Are you mental?" I knew I shouldn't antagonize him, but rage was bubbling over. The audacity of this man. The absolute nerve. That's when I made a mistake. I stopped moving. His hand shot out and grabbed the sleeve of my coat. I yanked my arm back, but he lunged his fingers, wrapping around my forearm with surprising strength. He leaned in, closer, and I caught the smell. Sour alcohol and something else. Something like copper. I looked around frantically, heart hammering against my ribs. There was no one, just trees and shadows. My throat tightened and I tried to shout, but it came out cracked, more of a whimper. He just stared at me, smiling. His eyes weren't drunk anymore. They were sharp, awake, enjoying this. That smile was the worst part. It wasn't lustful or angry. It was pure joy, like watching a child torment something small and helpless. That's when fear truly gripped me, because this man wasn't just some lonely drunk looking for conversation. He liked the fear. I wrenched myself free and stumbled through the gate, screaming at him to leave me alone. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just walked as fast as I could, nearly tripping over my shoes, every step feeling like it wasn't fast enough. Up ahead, I saw a man in a garden tending to his flowers. He looked up, and I think he saw the terror written all over my face. I didn't even try to act calm. I beelined straight for him, shaking. He asked if I was all right. I turned to look behind me. The man was gone. The weight of it all hit me at that moment. I broke down, gasping and crying as I asked the gardener to call the Garda. That's our police. He did. He was kind, stayed with me the entire time. The guard had told me they found the man not long after, sitting on another bench nearby. They said he was harmless, gave him a warning, and told him to stop bothering women. He had a Craigslist ad in his hand that read something about looking for a lovely woman to share my life with. That was it. A few days later, I took the same route home out of habit. I told myself I was being paranoid, that it was a one-time thing. He was there again. Same bench, same half-empty bottle. But this time, when I passed, he didn't say a word. He just smiled and held up something between his fingers. It was a single white earbud and that Craigslist ad. The earbud was mine, and that ad made the hair on the back of my neck stand on end. Let's just say I take a different way home now. A few years ago, when I was about 20, I was living in Florida and going through a really rough patch. In a moment of impulsive recklessness, I decided to take a few tabs of LSD and go on a solo day trip to St. Augustine, one of my favorite places, known for its history, charm, and hauntings. St. Augustine has always had this magnetic, eerie pull to it. It's beautiful in the daylight and deeply unsettling at night, like the past really never lets go. Still, I'd been there many times before and always enjoyed the strange energy of the place. The 3-hour drive was uneventful. I parked downtown, wandered through the cobblestone streets, browsed odd little shops, and even made the long trek to the lighthouse, passing hundreds of tourists along the way. I was peaking hard, teetering between awe and paranoia, but I loved it. That razor-thin edge between beauty and fear was exactly what I'd been chasing. As I started to come down, I figured I'd end the day with a peaceful sunset swim. There were still a couple of hours of daylight left. I found a small pull-off from the main road that led through a mile-long, narrow drive into a hidden beach parking lot. I walked to the sand, kicked off my shoes near the start of the boardwalk so I could find my way back, and wandered down the beach for about 45 minutes. Eventually, I found a large, smooth log washed up on the shore. I dropped my bag and stripped down for the swim. The water was freezing, but the fading sun turned everything gold and crimson, and for a moment, I felt free. Then, suddenly, I felt a searing burn on my side, like acid on raw skin. I gasped, stumbling out of the water, convinced some spirit of the depths had marked me. It turned out to be a jellyfish sting. I laughed at myself, still high and now nursing a sharp welt. But the moment had passed, and so had the light. The sun dipped below the horizon. I needed to get back. By the time I reached the entrance to the boardwalk, dusk had set in. Shadows stretched long and deep. The boardwalk, now only dimly lit by the dying sky, felt infinitely longer. I began the half-mile walk back, the wooden planks creaking beneath my bare feet. And that's when I heard it. A voice. At first, I thought I was hallucinating, but then I saw him. An older man, dirty, wild-eyed, energized from the brush. He was mumbling incoherently, hacked at the palmettos and reeds with a massive machete, like he was clearing a jungle. He hadn't seen me yet, so I froze, heart thundering, unsure of what to do. He started walking in the same direction I needed to go. I waited a bit, then decided to follow at a distance, quietly, carefully. For a few minutes, it worked. He was too wrapped up in his strange muttering to notice me. But then, without warning, he stopped, dead still. I didn't know what to do, so I decided to walk past him, quickly and calmly, praying he wouldn't notice. As I passed, he muttered something unintelligible. I didn't dare respond. I didn't even look at him. Then, I heard his footsteps behind me. He was following. I picked up the pace. So did he. He started speaking louder, angrier now. I still refused to look back. I was certain that if I made eye contact, if I acknowledged him in any way, he'd snap. Then, I felt it. The whoosh of air as he swung the machete behind me. That was it. I ran. I sprinted down the boardwalk, barefoot and breathless, my heart a live wire in my chest. Behind me, he ran too, shouting, words slurring and rage rising. I saw the parking lot ahead and didn't stop. By some miracle, I managed to rip my keys from my bag as I ran and dove into the car, locked the doors, and hit the ignition, just as he burst out of the tree line, machete raised. I floored it. As I peeled out of the lot, I saw him in my rearview mirror, standing by the road, silhouetted in the headlights. He was screaming, unhinged, furious, swinging that machete like a madman. He lunged toward the car, but I honked the horn and sped past, disappearing into the night. I didn't stop driving for a long time. When I finally pulled over, hands trembling on the steering wheel, I realized how close I had come to something terrible. My friends always warned me about my solo trips. They joked that one day I'd end up a true crime case on a podcast. That night, it felt less like a joke. But here's the twist. 2 weeks later, I came across a news article. A local man had been found dead in that same stretch of marshland. No ID, just his body. Mangled, torn apart, no sign of a weapon or an attacker. There was a Craigslist ad looking for some company in that same area. The police ruled it as an animal attack, possibly wild boar or gators. But they never found any tracks. No blood trail. Nothing. Just his body and the machete lying beside him. They released a photo. It was him, the man from the boardwalk. And I still wonder, what if he wasn't the predator that night? What if something else followed us out of that water? In July of 2018, my 3 best friends and I, all girls, all 18, decided to take a post-freshman year trip to Barcelona. We had been talking about it for months, but in typical fashion, we didn't actually book anything until May. If you've ever tried to find a decent summer rental in Barcelona that late in the game, you'll understand how hard it was to find something affordable and well located. After days of frustration and endless scrolling on Craigslist, one of my friends found a studio apartment near Los Ramblas. It looked decent and was just barely within our budget. We booked it without much thought. In hindsight, maybe we should have thought harder. The building was on a narrow, quieter side street, about a 5-minute walk from the main drag. It felt a little sketchy at night, but the place was locked down tight. First, there was a front door from the street that required a key. Then, a flight of stairs led to a second locked door, which opened to a small hallway with 3 separate units. We had a third and final key to our unit. That last door had no outside handle, meaning if we left without our keys, we'd be locked out completely. Same with the balcony, no exterior handles, only accessible from the inside. All of this seemed like overkill when we arrived, exhausted after 15 hours of travel. But security wasn't a bad thing, right? We met the neighbors that first night, a group of loud but friendly Italian guys on the balcony next to ours. We waved, exchanged a few words, then went back inside to crash. The layout of our studio was tight. The front door opened into the main room where two of my friends slept in a bed against the wall. At the far end of the room was a pull-out sofa where I slept next to my other friend. Our routine was simple: clubbing until 4 a.m., passing out by 5, waking up around 11, then exploring the city until evening. For the first 3 nights, it was perfect. Carefree, loud, fun. Then came the 4th night. We got home late, as usual, giggling and messing around before finally going to sleep at around 5 a.m. What happened next still makes my stomach twist. Around 7:30, the friend sleeping beside me suddenly jolted upright, gasping. She suffers from sleep paralysis, so I assumed that's what was happening, until she screamed, "What the f—" Her voice was raw, panicked. It pulled me from my dream, and I sat up too, heart pounding. That's when I saw him. There was a man crouched at the foot of our bed. He had one hand on my friend's ankle and was peering underneath the bed like he'd dropped something or was searching for something. For a brief second, still half asleep, I thought it was someone I knew. I murmured, "Edward?" But the man froze. His face was pale and thin, his eyes wide. Slowly, he stood up. Then, without a word, he tiptoed across the room, past the other bed, where our friends were still asleep, and exited through the front door. As he slipped out, he muttered over and over, "Oops, oops, oops." We just sat there stunned. My friend was shaking. She kept insisting she felt him touch her, that it wasn't a dream, it wasn't sleep paralysis. Eventually, we woke the others and told them everything. We checked our stuff. Nothing was missing. Phones, cash, IDs, all untouched. It didn't make sense. Then we realized the front door hadn't been locked that night. We were drunk and careless. But even if it wasn't locked, it was still closed. And remember, there's no outside handle. You needed a key to get in. Unless... We didn't call the police. We didn't tell the landlord. We didn't want to ruin our last day or get blamed for leaving the door unlocked. We tried knocking on the Italian's door next to us, but no one answered. It felt like they had just vanished. The rest of the trip passed in a fog of unease. We couldn't stop replaying it. Why didn't he take anything? Why was he crouched at the foot of our bed, touching her ankle like that? What was he looking for? We'll never know. But here's the part that chills me the most. 2 weeks after we got home, my friend received a text from an unknown number. It was just one sentence. "I found what I was looking for. Thanks for not locking the door." The number was quickly deactivated. We reported it, of course, but nothing ever came of it. To this day, I sleep with my door locked, a chair propped against the knob, and my phone under my pillow, because I keep thinking about what could have happened if my friend hadn't woken up, or worse, what if she had? In the early 2000s, Craigslist was a minefield, and I stepped on every trap it had. Back then, I had just bought an old house. It was a creaky fixer-upper, but it was mine. Somehow, on a $35,000 salary, The bank gave me a $300,000 loan like it was candy. Pre-financial collapse times were wild. Of course, I couldn't afford the mortgage alone, so I did what plenty of people did. I looked for roommates. I posted an ad. Quiet, respectful housemate wanted. No pets, no smoking indoors. And then the monsters moved in. Lars came first. Skinny as a matchstick with sunken eyes and wiry arms covered in fading tattoos. I told him he could smoke or hang out in the shed if he needed space. I didn't mean live out there. But he and his equally filthy friends claimed it as their own, cranking Metallica through the tiny speakers until dawn. They used my jars of nails and screws for target practice, left bongs everywhere, and treated the property like a flophouse. Strangers came and went at all hours of the night, all of them high, all of them dirty, and none of them safe. Lars had a perpetual grin and the stench of someone who hadn't bathed in weeks. His manners were non-existent, but he was weirdly cheerful, like a kid on the edge of a firework going off. I told myself I could manage, that I needed the help with rent. I was wrong. Then came Bilbo. Yes, that's what we'll call him. A bloated, sweaty man with sunken eyes and a voice like syrup gone sour. He claimed to be a former chemical engineer between jobs. He was polite, soft-spoken, seemed like a better choice. Until the day before he moved in, when he suddenly confessed he had a dog, a Maltese terrier, small and yappy, the kind I can't stand. My ad clearly said, no pets. But I caved. I needed the money. That was my first mistake. The second was believing anything else he said. He hadn't worked in years. His engineering experience amounted to stocking shelves at a paint factory in the 90s. He was in serious debt, surviving on what little he could scam. But worst of all, he started bringing in boys. Teenage boys. Quiet. Way too young. He called them nephews, but they weren't. They never made eye contact. They'd slip into his room without a word and disappear for hours. My gut told me everything was wrong. Sometimes I'd find the dog had been in my bedroom. Once, it shit right beside my dresser. Another time, my room reeked of cigarettes, despite no one in the house being allowed to smoke indoors. Ash and a burn mark appeared on my nightstand. When I confronted Bilbo, he just smiled and shrugged. Dog likes to explore. Then he'd disappear again. He barely left his room. He slept all day, ate all night. I'd hear the microwave at 2 a.m., mixing sounds, scraping bowls. He grew larger by the week. He claimed his weight gain was the result of chemical exposure from the paint factory. He was, in his words, building a case for disability. Things spiraled quickly after that. Lars drank more. Bilbo grew more hostile. They argued constantly about the dog, the noise, the smell. I started dreading coming home. I'd pull into my driveway and just sit there, hands on the wheel, heart racing, because I never knew what I was going to walk into. And then it snapped. I came home one night to chaos. They were screaming, shoving. A kitchen knife was on the counter, and Lars, wide-eyed, shirtless, high, picked it up. "If you don't shut that dog up," he said calmly, "I'll carve it into soup meat." Bilbo panicked, grabbed the dog, tried to barricade himself in his room. Lars pounded on the door, howling. Then Bilbo exploded. He charged at him. By the time I got between them, they were wrestling in the kitchen, the knife between them, the dog barking from behind the door. They knocked over chairs, shattered a bowl, even put a hole in the drywall. I called the cops. There was nothing else I could do. 15 minutes later, they were both in cuffs, hauled off, gone. The house was still. Too still. After weeks of chaos, the silence was almost painful. I decided right then I would never rent to strangers again. I didn't care about the mortgage. Peace was worth more. Lars left without a word. Packed his things, disappeared like a roach when the lights come on. Bilbo, though, tried to intimidate me. He threatened lawsuits, claimed tenants' rights, said he'd sue me for emotional distress. I told him I should have sued him for damages. After that, he vanished too. But they left shadows behind. For weeks after, people kept showing up. Burnouts who thought the shed was still the spot. Tweakers banging on the back door, thinking Lars still lived there. The police had to be called again and again. Then there were the boys. Bilbo's boys. They started coming around at night, knocking, tapping on the windows, pale faces in the dark. I told them over and over, Bilbo was gone. He didn't live here anymore. Some would nod, most just stared. Eventually, it stopped. That was years ago. I thought I had put it all behind me, until last month, when I was clearing out the attic. I found a shoebox. Inside were Polaroids, dozens of them. Some of Lars, some of Bilbo, some of the boys. But a few, just a few, were taken from inside my bedroom, from angles no one should have been standing at, while I slept. One even showed me brushing my hair in the window, and in the background, blurry and dark, was Bilbo, smiling. Back when Craigslist was still booming, before Facebook Marketplace took over the wheel, I moved away from my quiet hometown and into the chaotic sprawl of a big city. I had a job lined up, a place to stay. All the boxes were checked. Everything about the transition was smooth on the surface. What I wasn't prepared for was how fast the city chewed through your paycheck. Rent, groceries, transit, it all piled up. Before long, I was living thin between paydays, skipping meals just to keep the lights on. That's when I made the decision. The car had to go. I listed my 6-year-old Honda Accord. Not flashy, but solid. Anyone who knows cars knows a well-kept Honda is basically immortal. The old-timers called them bulletproof. I expected some low-ballers, maybe a few no-shows. Instead, I got James. He reached out by phone, polite, direct, in his early 40s, by the sounds of it. Said he was buying the car for his daughter, who just got into college. His voice was smooth, practiced, the kind of calm you instinctively trust. We talked back and forth a few times and agreed to meet. James showed up wearing khakis and a tucked-in polo, looking like he came straight out of a mid-tier office job. Well-groomed, watch on his wrist, soft hands, just normal. He inspected the car with care, ran his hands along the hood like he actually gave a damn. We took it for a test drive, me in the passenger seat, and I watched for red flags. Nothing. He negotiated a bit and asked me to hold it for 2 days while he got the cash. 2 days later, right on time, James calls me again. We meet in a quiet part of the city, sun overhead, kids playing in the distance. Nothing out of place. He hands me a cashier's check from Chase. Looks official. I tell him we're going straight to the bank. I don't release the title. until it's notarized and the check clears. Standard practice. That's when something changes. James gets fidgety. Not panic, just off. His fingers twitched against the steering wheel. He wipes his forehead like he's suddenly too warm. His smile flickers, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes. I notice the sweat building along his hairline. Still, I try to rationalize it. Maybe he's nervous spending this much money. Maybe he's not used to dealing in cash. But something primal in my gut was telling me, you need to watch him. We're pulled over on my street. He's in the driver's seat again. Insisted on another quick test, just to be sure before finalizing. I agree, but reminded him that we're going to the bank next. No exceptions. He nods, smiles. Then he moves. Fast. James throws the car into gear and slams the door. But he's sloppy. He underestimates me. Before he can take off, I bolt over the hood, rip the driver's side door open, and yank him out. He stumbles, caught completely off guard. He shrugs, chuckling like a kid caught with his hands in the cookie jar. Relax, he says. I was just kidding. Kidding? Then he pulls a switchblade. I freeze, but just for a second. It's gleaming in the sun, thin and mean. He tells me to back off, and now his voice has no trace of that polished, rehearsed charm. It's low, raw, and ugly. Before I can react, he lunges. The blade doesn't reach me, but his boot does. Right between the legs. My body lights up in pain, fire shooting down my spine as I collapse onto the asphalt. He jumps into the car, peels off, nearly taking my legs with him. I'm gasping on the curb, humiliated in agony, watching my own Honda vanish down the street. Passenger door swinging open. A breeze left in its wake. By some miracle, an undercover cop car pulls up from a nearby alley not 30 seconds later. I flagged him down, frantically explaining through gritted teeth what happened. They believe me. I see it in their eyes. But instead of chasing him, they play it by the book. Take my statement, radio it in, tell me they won't go high speed with a civilian in the back seat. I nod, defeated, bleeding inside, and try not to throw up from the pain. The following weeks were a nightmare. Insurance questions me like I'm the criminal. They send someone to my apartment, verify the car isn't hidden nearby. It takes 3 full months of scrutiny before they agree to pay out. The same week I'm expecting the check, I get a call. They found my car 3 states over. Turns out James wasn't working alone. He handed the car off to someone else. We'll call him Rick, who sold it to some poor guy on Craigslist. That buyer? A real dad. Really did have a daughter in college. But when she tried to register the car at the DMV, it popped up as stolen. That's when the cops got involved again. We all meet at the station. Me, the buyer, and Rick. I expected to see James. I didn't. Rick pretended like he didn't know who James was. Said he got the car from some guy. Couldn't remember his name. Total BS if you ask me. But with the cops there, Rick offered to refund the money to the college kid's dad in exchange for us all walking away. At that point, I was exhausted. So we agreed. The dad kept the car. I took the money. Rick refunded him. Not justice, but something close. But as I turned to leave, I made a comment. I said I wasn't done, that I was pressing charges, and I wanted this whole mess fully investigated. I reminded them I was robbed. I was assaulted. Someone needed to pay. Rick went pale. Beads of sweat gathered at his temples. He wouldn't look at me. I asked him, point blank, "You nervous, Rick? You got something to say?" He stammered, shook his head. I leaned in, close enough for only him to hear. "You tell James he's lucky I didn't kill him." That's when Rick looked up, just for a second. His eyes darted into mine, and he smiled, not out of fear, not out of guilt. It was recognition. It hit me like a freight train. There was no James. Rick was James. Same guy, different clothes, different voice, but same eyes. He'd shaved the beard, lost the accent, ditched the watch. He didn't want to disappear. He wanted to see if he could fool me twice, and he did. When I first graduated from massage school, I was desperate for money. Flat broke, really. Against all advice from my instructors, I decided to advertise my services on Craigslist. They warned us about it constantly, but I figured I'd be fine. I'm a guy after all. In the ad, I made it abundantly clear: no sexual services, strictly professional, all above board. I even dropped every buzzword I could think of to keep the creeps at bay. And for a while, it worked. Most of the responses were quiet, normal even. Then came Charlie. He messaged me asking for a 90-minute deep tissue massage. Last session, 9 p.m. on a Friday. That was my first red flag. The second came when he asked for a photo of me. I hesitated, asked why. He claimed it was just so he'd recognize me when I arrived. For safety, he said. He'd been robbed before. I didn't love it, but I reasoned. Okay, maybe that made sense. His house was within walking distance from my school, and he mentioned he had student massages there before. The more he talked, the more normal he sounded. So I went. Charlie asked me to enter through the side door leading into the basement. That immediately put me on edge. As I approached, I saw him peeking through the blinds, just barely parting them with two fingers. I should have left right then, but I didn't. I had a knife on me, tucked deep in my massage bag, just in case. The basement had that old wood-paneled look. Dim, musty, like a room that hadn't seen sunlight in years. There was a motorized wheelchair in the corner. The moment I stepped inside, Charlie emerged from the shadows, smiling wide. Too wide. He looked like something that learned to smile by watching people. Not one of them. He ushered me deeper into the basement, saying the massage would take place in the back bedroom. Said it was the quietest, coolest spot in the house. Neutral space, he called it. The deeper we went, the worse the air felt. As we passed down the narrow hallway, a figure came into view. A heavy-set woman with stringy hair and thick, smeared glasses stood in the dark, leaning on a cane. She didn't speak, just stared, her eyes vacant, fogged over, locked with mine. Charlie had told me he lived alone. I offered a polite smile and introduced myself, but she didn't blink, didn't respond, just watched. Charlie quickly nudged me forward, like she was some unpredictable dog that might snap if we lingered too long. That whole exchange screamed wrong, but I kept moving, numb and floating. I asked to use the restroom before we got started. Anything to get some space. "The one down here's not finished yet," he said. "Can I use the upstairs one then?" A beat. No. That was another exit closed. Still, I told myself maybe this was just a weird couple, eccentric. Maybe I was being judgmental. I needed the money. Charlie stripped all the way down without me asking, lay flat under the sheet, then asked if he could watch Dancing with the Stars while I worked on him. I gave a quick laugh and said sure, but I stayed alert. He had an odd fixation on his legs, wanted me to focus there for most of the session, claimed he ran marathons. Okay, but something about it didn't track. His legs weren't lean, they were slack, loose, and veiny. About 40 minutes in, he suddenly changed his mind. "I think that's enough leg work," he muttered, almost annoyed. He asked me to work on his abdomen next. Rare, but not unheard of. Claimed he'd lost a few 100 pounds and heard massage could help with loose skin. That's technically true, but it requires daily work, not a random late-night Craigslist appointment. Still, I agreed. 5 minutes later, the sheet started to rise. A tent. I froze. It didn't go away. Didn't shift. It just stood defiantly. I kept glancing at it, unsure if I was actually seeing what I was seeing. Then it twitched, moved. That's when I knew this wasn't just awkward. It was intentional. I pulled my hands away. "Hey man, that's gotta stop or we're done here." Charlie looked confused, glanced from the TV to me, to it. "Oh, that's me?" he said, as if someone else were responsible for what his body was doing. "What, you think your dick's possessed?" I snapped. He blushed, apologized, said he was dozing off, said it was a natural reaction. I looked towards the door, and that's when I saw her again, the woman, watching us through the cracked door, her lips slightly parted, breathing heavy. Was this some kind of reverse cuckold situation? She was enjoying this? I told Charlie it was fine. We would wrap it up. I wasn't a sex worker, and that wasn't that kind of session. He paid the full amount. No argument. But as I packed up, he lingered, dressing slowly, rolling his shoulders like he was showing off, letting himself hang free, no shame. As I gathered my things, he asked if I remembered the way out. I nodded. We said our goodbyes. But just before I stepped into the hallway, he stopped me. "One more thing," he said, holding a crisp, folded $100 bill. I said nothing, just waited. "You saw a lot of me," he said softly. "Made me feel vulnerable. Maybe I could see some of you?" I smiled and shook my head. "Massage is the only thing that I do." He scoffed, clearly offended. Then, like a switch had flipped, he pretended the whole thing never happened, gaslighting me in real time. I started walking out, but the woman was gone. I got to the door, found it locked top to bottom. At least 9 locks. Chain, bolt, latch, every kind imaginable. I started undoing them, heart hammering, and then I heard it. A creak. From above. Creak. Someone was coming down the stairs, slow, one step at a time. I was drenched in sweat by the time I undid the last lock, threw the door open and bolted into the night, threw my stuff in my trunk and floored it. 5 minutes later, I got a text. "Can I book a 2-hour undraped massage next time?" I didn't even respond. But it didn't stop there. By the next morning, he'd posted ads online accusing me of being the aggressor, called me a pervert, said I was unprofessional, used the photo I had sent him, name included. He smeared me across forums, massage directories, even Reddit threads. My reputation tanked overnight. Worse, my school contacted me. They found flyers, hundreds of them, printed and posted around campus. My name, my face, accusations. But here's the part that chills me the most. One of the instructors at the school told me they recognized the name. Charlie had been banned from getting student massages years ago after making inappropriate requests. He wasn't a stranger to them. They helped me clear my name, thank God. But Charlie and that woman, his wife, sister, or whoever the hell she was, they moved shortly after. That basement, still half remodeled, still empty. No one lives there anymore. But here's the twist. 6 months later, I got a letter, no return address. Inside was a single Polaroid photo of me taken from the massage table, my back turned, face blurred, but unmistakably me. On the bottom, written in shaky marker, "We know what you really wanted." Be careful who you let into your life, and for the love of God, never get your clients from Craigslist. I needed more money. Simple as that. The job I had barely paid enough to keep me afloat, and the future in that dead-end town was about as bright as a broken street lamp. It was one of those places where old folks came to die, and the young ones either escaped or withered trying. I was stuck waiting tables at a dying restaurant, clinging to the hope that something, anything, might lift me out. I even went to one of those career support meetings at my college. They spent half the time showing me how to use Snagajob and Indeed to chase minimum wage misery. I didn't need another soul-sucking hourly job. I needed something real, something that paid. That's how I ended up on Craigslist, swimming in the digital black alleys where desperation meets opportunity, and where predators wait with smiles. I sent out a few messages expecting nothing, but one reply came almost immediately. A dental office worker position. Simple admin work. The kind of thing I could do in my sleep. The pay? Nearly double what I was making. The guy said he was a dentist relocating from California to my area. Made sense. Weirdly. He described himself as a semi-retired, eccentric older, someone just looking for a quiet place to live and restart his practice. He was Russian, and his emails were peppered with grammar errors. I just read them off with a Russian accent in my head and brushed it off. That was my first mistake. He explained I worked from home for a few weeks while he relocated. He'd send me a laptop, printer, scanner, external hard drive, QuickBooks software, everything I'd need to hit the ground running. Then came the part that should have had me running. He said, "Perhaps you want to put some personal things in place before you start. I've decided to provide an upfront payment of $300. I will include this and the cost of the equipment in a certified check under my name. You deposit it and then forward payments to technicians and shipping companies from your location. This saves time and allows me to work remotely." It sounded strange, but just strange enough to be plausible. Like, maybe this is how professionals delegate. I was to act as his PA, after all. I rationalized it. I needed to rationalize it. I was too tired, too broke, and too desperate not to. The check came. I deposited it. It cleared initially. I used some of it to send out the moneygrams for equipment and installation. I even spoke with the guy on the phone. He had an accent, sure, but there was something else in his voice. Something that scraped against your instincts like fingernails on wet glass. But I ignored it. I went to bed that night imagining how this new life would look. The money, the peace, the sense of control. For the first time in years, I felt like maybe I'd done something right. The next morning, my world collapsed. My bank account was deep into the negative. The check? Forged. The money I wired? Gone. The bank hit me with penalties and I was overdrawn hundreds of dollars. My stomach turned into ice. I couldn't think straight. I called him, emailed, texted. He responded calmly at first, promising it would all be fixed that day. "Do not worry," he said. "You will be reimbursed very soon. Trust." But the next request came before noon. "Please send another payment to technician." I told him no, not until I had my money back. His tone shifted. "This is unprofessional," he growled. "You work for me. You do as told." I said I'd call the police if he didn't fix this now. That's when he went quiet. Then, in a low, cold voice, he said my full name, my address, my phone number, the name of my parents, my little sister's school. "Send the money," he said, "or you can kiss your shitty life goodbye." I hung up. At 4 a.m., he called again. I didn't answer. The voicemail was just static, then faintly a whisper. "Wake up." I answered the third call. I was angry, ready to scream. But before I could, the voice snapped. "You will die if you do not send the money. Get out of bed now." That voice didn't sound like a dentist anymore. It sounded like something else, something barely human. My mouth went dry. I asked him, "Who are you?" There was a pause. Then slowly, the voice replied with a dentist's name, like it was remembering to wear a mask. I said, "You're not him." The line went dead. I shut off my phone and curled into myself. I'd worked for months to save that $300, and in 2 days, it was gone. Along with my sense of safety, I was humiliated. I sat in my bathrobe for hours, trying to piece together how I could have been so stupid. 2 days later, my brother died. A heart attack. Sudden. Unrelated. But he was the one who'd helped me dig into the guy's background. The one who'd found the real dentist who used to live in California. The one whose dental office had shut down months ago. The one whose house was now up for sale. Every detail had seemed to line up. Too perfectly. Weeks later, I received a manila envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo. It was my brother, sitting at his desk, taken through a window. The back of the photo was blank, except for one line written in clean, printed handwriting. "You should have sent the second MoneyGram." And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these true Craigslist horror stories. I'd like to take a moment and thank the other members and the new listeners. of the channel. Thank you all so much for your dedicated support. I appreciate it more than I can put it into words. For without you, I wouldn't have a voice, and Back to Ashes would not exist. Thank you. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you're awake, I hope you've enjoyed these selections. Until next time, please take care of yourselves. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourselves a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.